This is CJ with the GOAT Sports Talk. Wanted to discuss, of course, the situation with the trade of Avery Bradley to the Pistons for Marcus Morris. This is not a good deal. Now, I know that the Celtics were worried about not being able to pay Avery Bradley when he did come up for free agency. He's a very good two-way player. He's a great defender, especially on the ball, and he is a good enough offensive player that you would want him on the court if you have him on your team. And, of course, he's going to command in the open market, especially with the way it is today. He's easily going to command, $20 to $25 million a year. I mean, heck, if Otto Porter, who, can get that kind of a deal that he's getting offered, and he's not a bad player at all, don't get it twisted. But when you just take into consideration what Avery Bradley offers, in addition to the fact that you're talking about two of the top teams at point guard have a guy in, Kyrie Irving and Stephen Curry. I think any team that's looking to compete for a title needs to have a guy that can, one-on-one defend those guys for most of the game, and that's versatile enough to also guard two guards when they do have those players. Because even though he is slightly undersized, he is long and so quick and so aggressive, and he's very good anticipation that he can guard, taller guards that are, 6'4" to 6'6", and still get the job done. So for me, it's like I don't think you can lose out on that versatility. This shows you what happens when a team has one bad contract that's on their team that is not fitting what they're trying to do ultimately, and it hurts these type of situations. The situation with Al Horford is not the rebounder that he used to be when he was in Atlanta. He used to be like more of a double-double guy, a guy that can at times give you, 15 boards on command and still do his thing. Now he's just basically more of a stretch four. He's trying to spot out from deep. He can hit the three now. That's cool, but ultimately, like, that contract is hurting them. And the reason why is because if you develop a guy on the level of Avery Bradley, if you're able to keep a guy like him, you should have him on your team. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, I would rather, if you're Boston, you'd rather be in a position where you might have to pay Avery Bradley 15 to 20 a year, and still have Gordon Hayward, have a developing Jason Tatum, and have, some of your other pieces, your Browns, your future picks coming in, and still have flexibility to sign maybe one more max player. So to me, it's like it just doesn't make sense to move Avery Bradley out of the other three players. Now, it's of course when they were shopping around, it was very clear that teams knew who their best talent of the three was, between Marcus Smart, between Crowder, and between Avery Bradley. Everybody knows that the best of those three is Bradley. So no one really, like, as far as from a market perspective, those other two guys are good if you want to have some depth and you need some other aspects, like you need a little bit of defense, but really, like, skill-wise, offensively, they're not as consistent as Bradley, who I believe averaged around 16 to 17 points a game. So to me, this is probably the first bad move that Danny Ainge made this offseason. And the reason why I say it's his first bad move is because, one, I do not fault him on the situation with Paul George. Paul George, as far as Indiana Pacers, they were looking for too much for what could be a one-year rental. It wasn't worth trying to get him. Jimmy Butler, they were asking for picks and things that they didn't want to give up. And so if they felt they could sign through free agency their third option, which would have been, Gordon Hayward, that's good enough. I think, for one, Gordon Hayward, if he's going to win a championship, he cannot be your best player on your team, point blank. They still got Isaiah Thomas, but I think they're going to have to let Isaiah Thomas walk, and they're going to have to get a player that's actually better than Gordon Hayward. So it's like a lot of different things that they just messed up on. I believe that this somewhat took them a step back because, one, they don't rebound well. They also lost Kelly Olynyk to Miami already. So they're already lacking a depth in the front court. Then you threw away your best perimeter defender when your other guard player is 5'8" and can't guard anybody due to his size in Isaiah Thomas. So who's going to defend on that team? Like, who are you going to defend? Like at some point, you gotta keep two-way players, and that's where the NBA is going. Your top players have to be able to have a two-way ability, and Avery Bradley was developing more and more as an offensive player. Who knows how far he would have gotten? He probably is a little bit more offensively skilled than like a Tony Allen, but he brings that type of toughness in terms of defense, to a team. So to me, this is a good pickup by Detroit. They also already have, the big fella, down low, in Andre Drummond. And, they're looking at, of course, other players that they're looking to extend. Of course, they got Reggie Jackson. So to me, as far as from a youth perspective and building, they could see where they could be in the next 2 to 3 years if they get a couple of big free agents to come to Detroit, which is hard to do because Detroit is not what it used to be as far as a city. And so it's not that much of a, it's not much they can really do but really build through the draft and hopefully get some young players that they can develop into something great. But again, it's just a bad move. I think if they were going to get rid of him, I don't know where Houston was. To me, Houston should have looked at a guy like him. Now, everybody would say, well, look, they got rid of Patrick Beverley. But remember, Patrick Beverley was part of a deal to get Chris Paul. If you can get another Patrick Beverley the way that they were giving him away for, I mean, there's a couple of players that they could have moved in order to get Avery Bradley, even if it's a one-year rental. Or you see where you're at next season, and if you can't get LeBron, maybe you lock him up for 4 or 5 years with Chris Paul and him, and you hopefully go and get you some young big men talent that can play, and they've drafted some of those recently. So I don't know. This is just a bad deal. Danny Ainge really messed up. I think that this is going to actually hurt the Boston Celtics. So that's pretty much it. Signing out.